This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 361 for Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. It's a lot of 20s in there. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me this week is Brockett Vola. You can find him at the Cat Volver and all the social media that matters. Welcome back, my friend. How are you?
All right, going along.
Everybody's just chugging along. Everybody's chugging along. We have reached the bubble phase. I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but here in Nova Scotia, with the COVID-19 restrictions being slightly loosened, people can now bubble with another family. So, for example, I think it might be my sister and my mom, but like you can go and visit with a friend, a close friend or family, and be able to hang out and just be together. But then that's it. You only get the one household that you have to pair up with. So most of the times you're seeing like, in-laws or, sisters and brothers and like people in immediate family kind of teaming up, because it allows parents to maybe help out with, all the different things that are going on. But yeah, it's been interesting to see the gradual change. I do feel that some people's spirits are definitely higher. And I have to share this one story that I saw on Instagram. I don't remember who designed it, but it's a hug tarp. Have you seen this?
No. So I have an idea. Go ahead.
So it's a giant plastic tarp with 4 sleeves in it. 2 go one way, 2 go the other. And so you hang it from like a tree or a clothesline, and it puts a giant plastic barrier between you and the person that you want to hug.
Yeah.
And then you basically just hug with a giant piece of plastic between
just
you.
through the tarp.
Anyway, it looks ridiculous, but I'm imagining it's probably fulfilling a decent need for people. And I've seen a bunch of different things on social media as things have started to open up. Another goofy one that I saw was a cafe in Germany was giving people hats with pool noodles stuck to them.
Yes, to keep them apart.
Yeah, so if I've got a 3-foot pool noodle coming out of my forehead like a unicorn, and you do as well, then that means as long as the pool noodles do not touch, then we are 6 feet apart. And I thought that was odd. But
there's one. There's in Florida. They showed on the national news that whatever, bars are reopening. Let's put that aside. But they put people in. Basically, it looks like giant, the really super thick inner tubes that look like monster truck tires.
Right.
And then there's like a little table, and they cut out the middle, and people climb into the middle. So they're literally just walking around the bar with their quote unquote table wrapped around them, thus forcing them not to actually get close enough, because they'll just bump things. And so they show people just walking around with those, and if they walk up to somebody else, they bump into their inner tube, and it forces both of them to be that far apart. And so that was one of the few things I was like, well, at least that's sort of in place. And those sort of things really remind me of a short-lived show with Lee Pace, done by Barry Sonnenfeld, called Pushing Daisies, which was awesome. It was a fun little magical realism where the main character could touch dead people and they'd come to life, but if he touches them again, they would die. They would be dead, and dead for good. And basically one of the other main cast members he brings back to life, and he can never touch that person again, or else they will be dead. And so throughout the rest of the series, when he wants to interact with that person, he has to throw up some plastic, or he has rubber gloves, and in his car he literally built a divider from passenger and driver seat, so that he could wave at that person, and that person could travel with him, and that sort of stuff. So when you talked about the hug tarp, I was like, oh, the pie maker, the poor pie maker. He's feeling COVID-19 even more now, because he used to be able to touch other people. Now he can't touch anybody. So yeah. Anyway, that's I can see those types of things coming out, and it's interesting because once you you headed into the entire uncertainty of things, I think most people would say, and I would agree that without an end date in mind, you really have a sense of walking through a fog and you don't really know
Hmm.
where you're going. Whereas now, if you can see, like, a little blinking beacon somewhere in the fog, and you don't know for sure when you're going to get over there, and you can't judge the distance well, but you have an idea that there's something out there, and you're going to go towards it, safety wise. And so that's what I think a lot of people can cling to, and it helps a lot, having that in mind. Because when you really get down to brass tacks with a lot of stuff, like, and you press into other things, you're like, well, I don't even know how this is fun. Like, it's funny that things like ESPN are even trying to keep their business open at this point, and they're talking about sports that don't exist. And they have to basically say, well, if they play a baseball season, if they play a hockey season, so it's like, okay, cool. Like, your elements of stuff still has a lot of murkiness to it, but functionality of society is slowly wandering towards the beacon, and then at some point maybe that'll suss out the darkness. So very metaphorical today. Honestly, I'm a metaphorical person anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that with some of the city parks and beaches and things now being open, we've had a late spring here in Nova Scotia anyway. So it's only just in the last week where it started to hit like 15 degrees on a regular basis, which is, I don't know, something mid 50s, I guess. Uh, so still cool, but still sunny and nice and fresh air and stuff like that. And so the combination of things being reopened and the nice weather finally hitting, because we had snow just like last week or the week before.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so nothing that stayed, but like cold enough that there's snow coming out of the sky still. And you're just like, oh
Yeah.
wow, it's May, and
Yeah.
normally, and that's late. Normally mid-April is kind of like where that stops. But yeah, there's been some freak weather systems coming by, and it's one of those things where, you know, I can feel myself just like itching to be outside and away from computer screens and doing all that kind of stuff. And I've been reading outside quite a bit, even if it's not quite warm enough to like go out and have a pleasant run because it's still like really windy and cold and stuff. But sitting on the back deck in the sun out of the wind, it's actually been quite nice. And actually, I'll talk a little bit more about what I've been reading a little bit later in the show. However, we do have an email from a listener, which is always fun to kick off at the start of the show. It's from Charlie Donnell. A long time ago, or a long, long time ago, is the subject of the email. Hi, Joel and wonderful co-host. I love this podcast and the Sponge Chunks. Well, thanks very much. A little while back, I was listening to an episode of the Citadel Cafe where you were talking about Star Wars Rebels, and you mentioned how Star Wars history is a clean slate. With the Mandalorian featuring Baby Yoda, quote unquote, I was wondering what you think of having these potential prequels dive into the history of Yoda's race. Charlie. So I think what Charlie is getting at is a conversation that it might have even been you and I, Brockett, that had this. Was referring to the idea of additional Star Wars universe franchises,
Mm.
going back so far as to like the Old Republic or earlier, so that the current canon of characters and mythology just doesn't matter. They would have a clean slate and be able to do whatever they want. And if they did that, would we want to see more about the race that Yoda belongs to, as well as the child? And in that light, I think they would be smart to steer away from any details about whatever race Yoda and the child happen to be. Um, just give me something new. I don't need to see Wookiees and Yoda, and obviously we're not going to see things like astromech droids. Like the technology, I think is going to be an easier thing for them to spin back, but I don't want to see kind of like outside of humans classical aliens. I don't think we need to see quite a lot of, especially if they're main characters. I'm okay with like little nods to things, but I think they'd be better to have a full-on clean slate of new inventive worlds and ships and cultures and things. Um, you may be able to get away with it in an Easter egg. Like one of the things that's so nice about Yoda and the baby Yoda, the child in the Mandalorian, is their rarity. Like you've only ever seen three, I think, in the Star Wars universe. You've got Yoda, you've got the child, and then you've got one other. I think it was Yaddle is the character name, and they're in the one of the scenes in the Phantom Menace next to Yoda. I think it's at the end in the parade. but there's another character that has that same sort of like species look.
Hmm.
But that's it. And I think one of the things that keeps Yoda so mystical and the child so mysterious in terms of where they come from is how little we know. And I think that's an excellent tool. I don't necessarily need them to explain everything. How do you feel about having more, I guess, unraveled about Baby Yoda and or just the Yoda race in general?
It's tricky because, um, so we're so human centric, and at this point, I guess droid centric. That if a droid or a human like is on screen, it's like, yeah, it's fine. To the point where like when the clones are on, you're like, oh god, there's billions of clones, but that's not played out. But like, it's interesting. You have one tiny Yoda race creature, and people are like, "Oh man, Yoda, Baby Yoda." And the tricky part is, well, then they leaned further by giving Baby Yoda force powers. So okay, so now you've checked two boxes, and now you can't really dissect yourself from Yoda at all. But like, if it was literally just Yoda's race and it didn't have force powers, people probably still call it Baby Yoda because we don't really know much about that race. But it would still be like, okay, like if another Wookiee walks on screen, like at this point, we've seen enough Wookiees that it's not all of them are Chewbacca.
Right.
And if you do a good enough job, you can well define them. But it's tricky because, like you say, there's a lot of um, mystique and mystery and like interesting intrigue about like that race because we've only really seen it from Yoda. So it's weird. Like if like to me it's almost like, God, I'm so tired of seeing friggin' humanoids in every part of the galaxy. Even though, like if you go back to the old Republic, you would think like at some point in time they're not all going to be like like some other race is going to dominate the universe, right?
Mhm.
But probably not because humanity. But I think the thing is with that particular race, with Yoda's particular race, it is so entirely tied to that character. It's even trickier than just having another Greedo race. Sorry, I don't know enough of Star Wars to really get the races down, but like you're going to do if you're a casual fan of certain elements of the universe, you're going to say, "Oh, that's a Jabba race, that's a Greedo race, that's a Yoda race." And even though you might see more of them, they're so defined by that one main big banner
Yeah.
character.
Yeah, when people see a
So
hut, they don't necessarily think, "Oh, that's a hut." They think, "Oh, that looks like Jabba." Like they associate it with
yeah,
the main character. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think that's the tricky part is like what we've seen throughout the Clone Wars cartoons and some of the other cartoons that um there's far more races than even like the original prequels I'm sorry, the original trilogy and the prequels gave us. And then of course the new um, trilogy has given us 7 through 9. So with if you really want to count those 1 through 9 as canon, within those, there's still far more races that we've seen an ancillary like fiction and whatnot, and the Mandalorian is one of those where it's so popular now that anything that they bring up obviously is gonna probably spin off or blow up to some degree. So yeah, I it's hard. Part of me is like, if you've got a good story, t- have a whole like episode of like a billion of these Yoda people, find out about them. But then at the same time it's like I do get that there's some times where you just like I really have enjoyed recently when the rules of a story are not necessarily all laid out unless
Yeah.
you need it for the story.
Hmm.
So for instance, like origin movies and series and stuff like that still are very bankable in Hollywood because people come to them. But to me it's almost frustrating to the point of like I don't need to see all the mechanics behind things. And it's also one of the reasons why I hate prequels because then it's just basically all nothing but mechanics leading to the main course of things. But Mando is technically a prequel now that the new trilogy exists because it's between original and it's between 6 and 7. So it's like anything they do in Mandalorian, somebody out there is going to be like writing down and being like that doesn't sync up with the whole Rey and
Yeah.
Kylo trilogy. So they're already in a tricky spot as far as being a prequel. But I think because of the popularity of the Baby Yoda character, sadly, I don't think they're gonna. we're going to be able to avoid finding out more about that race. There's just going to be something. Like, it would be lovely. But I think the sensibilities nowadays are almost to lean too hard into giving too much until it's done.
Satisfying
Yeah.
the fans when they all have these questions and then answering all the questions, and it's really it's fans not knowing what they want, sort of thing. I
Hmm.
feel I know we're gonna get into some more details behind the child because that's the mission. Like that's what the Mandalorian is going to be doing next season. That's what they established in the finale of season one. However, I hope they focus on just the child and not like the Yoda race in general. Eventually, they're probably going to figure out that it's, somehow tied to Yoda, whether it's race or whatever. I have some theories that I won't get into right now, but I think that if they stick to just the individual rather than spiraling out into the race and where they're from and all this kind of stuff and trying to find his people, then I think that would be a better way to handle it. But I mean, who knows? It's in good hands. I mean, John Favreau is great. I really enjoyed the first season. I know Bryce
Hmm.
Dallas Howard is coming back to direct another episode in season two, so all that kind of stuff sounds fantastic to me. So I'm on board. I enjoy something that does make me feel safer about the Mandalorian is that the storytelling pace is much similar to the original trilogy than any of the
Yeah.
other ones. Having recently watched Rise of Skywalker last weekend, the pace of that movie is frantic compared to the original Star Wars movies. Even compared to Force Awakens, it's way way faster. And I think the Mandalorian has this really nice way of slowing things down and telling a story on the beats where it matters, And I feel like if they've got that kind of pace now, I don't see them doing this hyper dump of like information about the child all at once. Um, and if we do
Right.
get it, it's hopefully going to be trickled over the next season. I hope they just don't do like a one off, kind of like, and we solved it. It's like, well, that sucks. Because I'm looking
Yeah,
forward
you
to that.
don't want end of series Game of Thrones where suddenly the
Oh yeah,
storytelling mechanics of it get a little mismatched
yeah.
and propelled with jet fuel. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, thank you. No, thank you. But speaking of Star Wars, actually, that's what I've been trying to get into. And I've been trying to get into this since it came out. So, Star Wars, The Clone Wars Season 7 is on Disney Plus. And I've been wanting to watch some more sci fi and easy stuff on the brain. And I've been trying to get into the Season 7. And I've been having a hard time. And I haven't talked about it on the show because until now, I haven't had anything really nice to say about it. So I thought, well, I don't really want to put more negativity out into the internet, but so we're not going to get into any spoilers on season 7. I've only seen the first 4 episodes, but it's taken me 4 weeks or more to even get that far. Um, it's just been rough. Like the the first 4 episodes are filing into the well-known trope now that most streaming services are falling into, which is we've got a new season of 12 episodes, but we're going to take the first 4 to even bother to get going. And it's horribly frustrating. I think it's a cardinal sin when it's season 7 of a series. Like people know what to expect with Clone Wars. I mean, it's been around since 2003. I really don't think they needed to spend the first 4 episodes reintroducing the idea of what the show is about and how these characters are interacting. And so that I found frustrating, but also it's so juvenile in the first 4 episodes. And again, I can't judge it past this, but like the first 2 episodes, especially, like I was done with the Bad Batch 5 minutes after they arrived. And I was like, oh, this is just a terrible cluster of incredibly cartoony stereotypes that do not need to be included in the show. Like, have an
Hmm.
elite squad, great, but make them cool like Rex and Echo, and I can't remember some of the other clone names because it's been a while, but like these
Fives
clones,
and stuff.
yeah, fives, exactly. These clones developed like personalities and you get to know them as individual characters and you could separate them because of how they did their hair or like what their armor was like. And
Yeah.
and you got to know them and the Jedi generals started to have relationships like Cody, I think, was one of one of the commanders that Obi-Wan Kenobi used to deal with all the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I always found that kind of stuff really cool. And rather than focusing on that for the first 4 episodes, they introduced these 4 like Bad Batch of clones. That's how they got their name. So they don't look like clones. They're all different body types, and they've got weird strength and powers. And one guy's super strong, and the other guy's like a sniper. They're basically an ensemble superhero team from the 80s, and it's like smack you over the head. And it's all written for 8-year-olds. Like the big strong guy just runs around chuckling like Michelangelo and doing goofy stuff and doing things that you just can't do in a laser fight, like run headstrong like a bull into a bunch of battle droids that apparently can't shoot the broadside of a barn. Like, it just, none of it felt at all like the peril that we were used to seeing in the series, because in seasons 5 and 6, like, it got serious. And so,
Yeah.
because the show had matured with its audience, and so this is what I felt so frustrated, is that, just generously, let's just say that your youngest viewer in 2009, at the end of the series of season 6, was, to say, 8 years old. So your youngest viewer is still coming in at 8 years old at 2009. They're 17 now, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like your audience, and your audience that started with you in 2003, they're in their 20s. Like,
Yeah.
like right for an audience that appreciates it,
They're drinking
Yeah.
as they watch these now.
Yeah, exactly.
Legally, I should say.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Throw me a bone. Like, I mean, granted, I'm 41, and I'm still into Star Wars and still watching cartoons, but that's because these cartoons very often, as Rebels did and as the Clone Wars did back in the day, other cartoons like Avatar: The Last Airbender, Legend of Korra, they mature with their audience. So they aim them at the 10-year-olds at first, but 4 seasons later, they're aiming them at 14-year-olds, because those are the ones that are invested. Similar to the Harry Potter series, like aimed at 10-year-olds in
Yeah.
the first, and then the last one was scary for kids. Like, your audience is growing, and I feel like they could have done that and just picked up right where we left off. They have this great thing that I love about the Clone Wars, where they start off with that like 1930s or 50s serial, kind of like
Yeah.
War on Geonosis, and then they kind of go
Yep.
into
Yeah,
the whole
yep.
spiel, and they could catch you
Like
up in
Legend
30
of Korra
seconds.
does too,
Yeah,
yeah.
they could catch you up in 30 seconds. It's like, it's been many months since blah 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 blah, and then 45 seconds later, you're like, yep, cool, I know right where we are. Like, that's all I needed.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that at all. Now, all that said, like, it's still well animated. It's better animated, I think, than Clone Wars was previously, because of course technology has changed and animation has changed and all that kind of stuff. I really like the design. I think the characters look and move, great. Lightsabers and Star Wars and battles and all that kind of stuff, that all works fine. CG cartoons make it very easy to have big battles, and so now that I'm past the Bad Batch stuff, I feel like at the end of the episode 4, it was kind of maybe not the last time I'm going to see them, but probably the last time I'm going to see them for a little while, as I think the arc is going to shift. But at the end of that, you had a big battle, you had some Jedi commanding a bunch of clones, you had like the ships deploying, you had the ground fighting, you had a small covert op team on another droid battleship, like, so all the things that you expect from a Star Wars like climax of a situation. And that, I
Right.
really enjoyed it. You get to see Anakin be angry Anakin, which is something we started to see in the Clone Wars in season 5 and 6. And so we're starting to see a little bit more of that now. And his tactics are different when Obi-Wan's not looking. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that's going on that I think is really cool. But like, why didn't you lead with like episode 4 could have been episode 1? Could have been episode 1. And it would
Yeah.
not have mattered. Now, there's little things that they get in there, like getting Echo back. They had the droid army had kidnapped a clone, and they were using him to create some sort of algorithm to predict the clone's movements. And so getting him back was a key thing. But like, you could have written that into some other episode. It didn't have to take 4 episodes to just to get Echo back. And like I said, it's good. It's good, and I'm going to keep watching. It redeemed itself in episode 4. But I'm 4 episodes in out of 12, and there's still no Ahsoka. Like, she's all over the marketing, and
Yeah.
and it's become hard now. Even just looking for title card art for this week's episode on the podcast, I was trying to avoid spoilers, because you look for images, and it's like, oh, that's an image from probably an episode I haven't seen. So I just went with the poster, because I know from the trailer that Darth Maul's in it. And spoilers, Darth Maul dies in Rebels. so I know he doesn't die in this. Right? So hence you're probably
Prequels, gotta love
prequels,
them.
gotta love them, exactly. So they're going back and doing this all again, and you're like, well, Darth Maul's back, but like, I mean, he's not gonna die, so that's kind of frustrating. Um, so yeah, it's one of those things where uh, I'm looking forward to it now that I think it feels like the narrative is shifting and we're going to get into more Ahsoka stuff, which is why I started watching in the first place. She's probably one of my favorite Star Wars characters.
Yes, she's my number 2. She rose
Who was your number
incredibly
one
high up the ranks. Luke with a asterisk.
then?
I
Not
I
not.
love Luke, and I understand. I'm a Last Jedi defender, so I absolutely love Last Jedi. And
Oh
there's a
wow.
lot of elements of Luke and Last Jedi that l- quite literally can bring tears to my eyes. Just, I mean, you can't. It doesn't matter what you do with that character. There's still elements of that character that just bleed through and just bleed so poetically on the screen. But overall, I would say he's been my favorite. But Ahsoka now is to a point where like I can see how somebody who's not a fan of her is like, God, it's oversaturated. And that's how I've always felt about like certain characters like Chewie or Boba Fett, where I always thought like they were best as like side characters or like mysterious characters. And the more you get into them, the more you're like super annoyed that they're there
Mm.
because you're like, whatever. But Ahsoka, I think, has really deserved it because she has come on so elegantly and slowly throughout the Clone Wars series and has showed up in a lot more stuff. And back to the Mandalorian, there were rumors of potentially her making some appearances and some of that. So that's all very interesting to me. Obviously as a big Ahsoka fan. And so yeah, I basically asked my friend Adam who watched all of Clone Wars, and I basically skipped around after I plowed through a couple seasons and just tried to read the synopsis of the episode and or like Googled top 10 episodes of Clone Wars and just watched those
Mm.
because I just got so bogged down in like the 20 episode arcs, and sometimes there were arcs on planets of people I just did not care about. And anyway, so the new season came out and he asked me if I watched it. I was like, yeah, I don't know. And I was like, is it any good? He's like, yeah. Oh man, yeah. There's, I mean, like, you really got to watch the ending of it. I was like, okay, well, what's Ahsoka in? He's like, well, she starts up in episode 6, but you just got to watch the last 4 episodes for sure. And I was like, oh, I'll watch the Ahsoka stuff, and that's the arc you're about to get into, and it's got Ahsoka. Sorry, spoiler. She's in episode 5. But for me personally, I only got through I think like an episode and a half, and then I just went to the last 4. So I didn't even watch the first 4 you mentioned because as soon as I saw what it was going to be, I was like, nope, not going to be. I'm not going to take the time to watch these. I wasn't
Yeah.
interested in that element of the Clone War. The clones of the Clone Wars have never been interesting to me. The most interesting they ever got was when they showed up later in Rebels. To some
Rebels.
degree,
Yeah.
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 Um, and not to get too well, I don't know. At this point I have no idea what would be considered spoilerific for Rebels, but I just want to talk to you once you're done with the last season of Clone Wars. There's
Nice.
some stuff in. So my buddy Adam really thinks he listens to a lot of podcasts by creators about stuff that he likes, and he reads stuff. So he will like oftentimes like kind of bring some of his thoughts, but also stuff he like susses through with the creators. And he really got the vibe that basically the main people, like when Disney approached them or they approached Disney, whoever it was they wanted to do the last 4 episodes. And the last 4 episodes of Clone Wars season 7 feel like a movie. And
Right.
then they were like, well, why not do like a season? So the 8 before it are kind of just like, we're doing these
Tagged
so that
on.
we get picked up by Disney, so that Disney gives us the money that we want to do the last
Mm.
4.
Right.
And the last 4 have, I would say the last 4 really lean into the best things you can do in a prequel. I hate prequels, but
Right.
there are elements that there are elements of things you can do in a prequel that I feel like are justified because they use the confines box that they're stuck in, because like you just said, Darth Maul's in the trailer, great, but I kind of know where Darth Maul's going to end up, so what the hell is he going to do in this box? And so you get to see somebody basically write and create with characters that you have point A and you have point C, but the B, you're like, what the hell is in this magical puzzle box? And so that's what's really interesting. And I think they leaned into it well. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought the last 4 episodes were fantastic. The episode you're about to start, I think I got all the way through. And then I started the next episode. I was like, no, I'm just gonna go to the last 4. Adam tried to warn me. He knew how I was.
Yeah.
And that I would just not get to it. I would just like quit and never come back to it potentially. And he's like, just skip to the episode. What would it be? It was like
Probably
episode
8.
8. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
8 or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
and
it's
I'm
just
even
going
being
to,
careful because, like, of course, whether it's all being laid out for you on Disney Plus, it was being released one episode at a time, but now it's all available because I waited.
yeah.
When I'm looking through the list, I have to be careful because it's like, oh, I don't. The thumbnails just like it's a key moment with a character. So I knew that Ahsoka was coming up because I saw her at the corner of my eye in the thumbnail. And Disney Plus is not doing a great job of remembering where I was. Like if I go into Disney Plus and start it up like today, it's gonna throw me into season 1 instead of picking up where I left off in season 7. Even when I go into the season 7 list, it won't say, "Oh, you've watched these first 3." Like I have to remember where I was. Um, I've even gone so far as to go back to like the last 5, the last 3 minutes of an episode, just to kind of like, oh right, okay, that's where I left off. Because I just, like I said, I'm not binging it. It's not grabbed me. I watch like one a week, one every other day, depending on whether I've got other things on my list. Like generally, the last of the wild, because I've been spending more time outside. A lot of time in the wintertime, I end up hanging out with Netflix or my iPad Pro when I'm eating, watching YouTube mostly. And so now it's just like, well, I'll just watch like a short 20-minute thing and then I'll go outside and read at lunch or even I had a meal outside on the patio just a couple days ago. So like it's even to the point now where I can not be in front of the TV and be outside eating, it's very pleasant. So, I've been watching shorter things. Like I've not been sitting down for big like hour long things, and so the cartoons are great because when the YouTube is kind of like in between when content creators haven't put up their next thing, then I can just grab a quick 20-minute episode. And I'm actually going to be looking for more because I want more stuff like that's short like that to watch. Like I find right now. I find when I want a digital piece of entertainment, I'm finding the 20 to 30-minute window is much more palpable than like a 2 hour
Sure.
movie. Like even
Oh
when
man, I have so many suggestions for you, Joel. I have
no,
so many
yeah,
suggestions
so
for
much
short
anime,
little
I'm
toys.
sure.
Well, no, honestly, the first one I was gonna say is you can just scroll over within Disney Plus and check out 2 seasons, and it's done. Each season, I think, well, the seasons might be 20 each, but Gravity Falls, 2 seasons, and it's done.
Oh,
It
is that on
completes
Disney
a
Plus
whole
now?
arc. Yep.
Cool. I've heard good things about that.
It's you can finally see what that piece of art you drew that I went gaga over, and you're like, I don't know what that is, man. And I was
That's
like,
right.
oh, you're killing me, Joel. You're killing
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I can't remember. It was like Mr. Money something in a pyramid. I can't remember
Bill
the.
Cipher. Yeah,
Yeah, Bill
he's
Cipher. Yeah.
and he's the other character. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that I would highly recommend because this is one of the shows where um like you were going back when you originally talked about the Clone Wars season 7. Like when we were growing up, you always talk about this when you're older, how things were better. But not even that. You can go far. I mean, Avatar: Last Airbender whole series is now on Netflix.
Now on Netflix, saw that
Fantastic.
today. Yep.
It's phenomenal. And the thing about that is, like you say, it grows with its audience. But at the same time, from episode 1 to the ending, you could say it doesn't really change much. Tonally, writing, character development, like from point 1 to the end, it still has a cohesiveness, and it does dramatically change just to like draw people in or whatever. And then at the same time, from the first episode to the end, adults could watch it with their kids and see depth in characters from point 1 to the end, that their children would eventually see or would see on a rewatch or whatever. And there's some cartoons out there that I found that still lean into that. And I mean, I don't want to. I'll take a shot. I feel like a lot of Cartoon Network I've seen is not like that. A lot of Cartoon Network is like, what's the big splashy thing? Like I've never been a SpongeBob SquarePants fan. I understand there's a lot of merits to it, but to me that was all about like the Pee Wee Herman, Pee Wee's Playhouse, like loud, squeaky, popping, bouncing, jumping, throw some jokes around, that sort of stuff. But like the cohesion of a story, like Tailspin, DuckTales, Avatar: Last Airbender. These sort of things where you have sort of a better grounded, cohesive story with some arcs. And there's still some great shows out there. And Gravity Falls is just one of those that 2 seasons and it's done. I mean, you don't even have to like now I think, oh man, I'd love to rewatch Darkwing Duck, and I'm like, man, that's like 60 episodes. But like, do you have like the time to rewatch 60 episodes when you have 6,000 episodes of shows you've never seen that you want to see? So
Well, that's the thing. Yeah.
um, yeah, but it's anyway, segueing back, but the Clone Wars, I think season 7 is got a little Disney execufied with those first 2 arcs, but that last one, and this is actually kind of in the face of what you just said, that those last 4 episodes, Joel, if you sit down just to watch the first one of the last 4, I don't know that you're gonna want to be able to like stop it and then come back. Like you're gonna be like salivating to watch the next 20, then the next 20, and then the next 20 until you get through those 4, because it feels, and even yeah, it just flows really well, like a film. So which
Cool.
is cool, because I think originally when they did the CGI, they released the Clone Wars film, and then they started the series, and so now that kind of ends, in my opinion, ends in a movie, even though they're 4 episodes. But yeah, it's quite good. The last 4 were very, very good. I will save other thoughts I have for it and what it means towards the greater Star Wars universe to when you're finished, so we can talk
Yes. Yeah.
more
No. There's going to be a
about that.
part 2. Much. I find that with these series that I quite like the Dragon Prince and some of the other cartoons that we've talked about, like
Dragon,
Troll
yeah,
Hunters, and like on the show in general, not just you and I, but like just on the show on the Citadel Cafe in general, the larger cartoons, I tend to come to them in 2 parts. Usually, it's about first impressions in the first handful of episodes and how I'm feeling about the introduction of the world, and then at the end, it's like, all right, well, we can get into a full on spoiler cast and just like not have to tiptoe around things and stuff like that. So,
yeah. Those are
um,
both good examples of what I was trying to say too. Like those are
mhm,
ones that honor multiple tiers of audience and storytelling as
mhm.
well. Troll Hunters and Dragon Prince. So yeah.
So the other thing that I've been doing, as I mentioned, is reading a lot outside, and I do want to kind of just reiterate how much I'm enjoying World of Warcraft Chronicle Volume 3. I mentioned this on the show last week, but I hadn't really gotten that far into it. I'm almost done now. I'm actually to the point where I'm kind of slowing down because when it's over, there are no more. I can't order Volume 4 on Amazon because it doesn't exist. I don't know if they're writing it. I hope they are. Um, because it's really good. I'm really enjoying it. It's a different pace. Things are moving a lot faster now that we're into essentially I'm into the point where World of Warcraft exists. So World of Warcraft, as far as the timeline is concerned, starts around 25 years after the Dark Portal arrives. The Dark Portal being the thing that brings the orcs to Azeroth and sparks things like orcs versus humans, the strategy games, and the lore, and the first war, and the second war, and all that kind of stuff. Frozen Throne, the introduction of Arthas, like all that kind of stuff has happened in this book. And I've been reading about it because it all happens like after the Dark Portal. So book 1 and book 2 had a lot of like 10,000 years before the Dark Portal, a lot of uh, world building and faction, creating and rivalries and old histories and things and racial development, all that kind of stuff. But now the beat by beat, it's like, wow, this next chapter is 25 years after the Dark Portal, and this next chapter is 26 years after the Dark Portal, because things just so much is happening all of the time in several different places, because you end up getting into the expansions and things. But one of the really cool things, and I was contemplating reading it on the show, but it's a little bit long, is a really cool passage describing the rise of heroes within the Horde and the Alliance to meet the ever changing threats to peace on Azeroth. And after the first couple sentences, you realize, oh, they're talking about the launch of the game. They're talking about bringing all of us, because previously it's all been about Thrall and Jaina and Arthas and the dark, the Void Lords, and like all the Sargeras and the bad guys and the demons and Illidan and all this kind of stuff. But now they're going into like, well, there's these heroes that vanquished this evil being, but we don't know who they are because there was a lot of them. Several million of them flooded the universe. And but it was a really nice nod to be just like, and then like as things progressed, like, Thrall was busy with this and our heroes were busy with the grander scheme of things, but that didn't stop. I don't know what the I'm trying to like Ragnaros, that didn't stop Ragnaros the Fire Lord from enslaving the Iron Dwarves and needing, and the Iron Dwarves kidnapping the daughter of Magni Bronzebeard. Like all these smaller things needed heroes to go take care of it. Well, that's you. and
Yeah.
and so it was really kind of cool to have this passage like reference to players because it's so memorable when you read it. Then from then on, they would say like, the Zandalari trolls are trying to summon the Loa of Blood to try and harness its power so they can seek their revenge on the elves. And Thrall, busy in Outland with big things like demons and Illidan, dispatched a series of heroes to go deal with the problem. And he's like, oh,
Yeah.
that was a 5-man raid. I remember that. Or a
Yeah.
5-man dungeon. Like I remember doing that. And so stuff like that I think is really cool, especially because I have played, and most of my memory from the depth of my play comes from Warcraft Classic, Burning Crusade, the first expansion, and then Wrath of the Lich King. Then there's a gap because I sort of went through Cataclysm and I sort of didn't, and then I played quite a lot of Mists of Pandaria. So I haven't read in the book up to introducing pandas, and that's going to be really cool if I get that far. I'm not sure whether that's going to be in this book or not, but that history and culture of Pandaria is just so rich and so cool. And so fresh in my mind because it's the last real expansion I played seriously. I did play Warlords of Draenor with some friends, but it was like with different characters. I didn't play my main characters on it. So reading it has been just really cool. I am noticing some changes in the pacing in terms of like the way that the lore is structured. You really start to see gameplay mechanics and like boss fights and stuff. And it's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's noticeable because you'd be like reading about this lore and like the 4 horsemen of this and the Lich King would send his Lich to defend this one fortress, and it's like, oh right, there's the 4 wings of the raid, the 4 horsemen, and then the big bad guy in the middle. Right? And you're just like,
Yeah.
so the lore at this point is starting to reflect the game mechanics that they wanted to achieve rather than the other way around, which was the lore exists and the game mechanics are being written to reinforce the lore. And I think,
Mhm.
I mean, again, it's not a bad thing. I think what's really neat about it is that you're witnessing the part where they had no idea that World of Warcraft was going to be this huge. And so the lore was written around the mechanics at first. And then later on, they kind of had to retcon and be just like, okay, wait a minute. The lore is why
Yeah.
people love this thing. We need to write the lore in its entirety. Like, let's just biblify this. And then we can go from here and create game experiences based on how these characters would react or what these motivations are of these factions. And so I'm reading stuff now that is older and therefore based more on the game than it was based on lore first. But it's still cool because I mean, a lot of times just like, I recognize that name. I think I went on that quest. I think I had to help that guy collect, save his daughter from whoever, stuff like that's kind of fun. But it's a good book. And I'm experimenting with some things in the community, from a little bit of town hall feedback I got in the Discord. And that is, we've got some affiliate links going up. So I have always had an Amazon.ca affiliate account when I was running my webcomic, but I've not done much with it in the last 5 years. So I've gone and signed up for a bunch of other Amazon affiliate accounts, and I'm using the one link feature on Amazon.com, which in theory should link everything together. Now, they say it's easy. I did not have that experience. However, I've got some early feedback from some people in the Discord this morning that say it seems to be working. So, in addition to linking to World of Warcraft Chronicle Volume 3 just on the website for show notes, I'm also going to throw up some affiliate links to the book in the show notes. So, if you're interested in this, if it's something that you want to check out, if you like World of Warcraft, or I recommend these books for people that just like fantasy. Like if you just like Lord of the Rings, you just like world building with swords and axes and magic and demons, then Giver, they're fantastic books. I highly recommend them. And if you're going to pick them up, some of them are on sale right now. And in the process, you could support the show a little bit along the way. If it's something you're going to buy anyway, then why not? It's no extra cost to you. It's just a little bit of Jeff Bezos money goes to kind of help the podcast along a little bit. So
Yeah.
I'll have those affiliate links up on the show notes at thecitadelcafe.com for anybody that's interested. I'm curious. I know that you are at least. I don't remember. Did you play World of Warcraft, Rocket?
I think I did a trial of it.
Right.
I played a little bit of Warcraft 2, but the bulk of my experience in the entire universe is playthroughs of Warcraft 3.
Right.
That's one where they introduce the
Arthas.
elves and Arthas,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I will say it was a real mind flip to play through the first campaign in Warcraft 3, and Arthas is like one of your special dudes. And then you go off to the area, and then he gets Frostmourne, and then suddenly, like, you're like, wait, what? What just happened with this dude I liked? And then,
Yeah.
like, the very next campaign is like, oh, you're Arthas, but now he ain't good? Like, you're like, what? So that was a real mind flip. I think I played that when it first arrived, was right in high school. So that was interesting. Blizzard's always done a really good job with a lot of that sort
Oh,
of
and
stuff
and
through
the
download.
Lich King in Arthas is a really complex character too. Like I've always known that, but you don't really get the same feeling from it in the game uh, as you do in the book. Because I didn't play Frozen Throne. Like I didn't play Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne. So I didn't know the origins. I didn't have those attachments. So just playing World of Warcraft and going through Ice Crown Citadel and stuff, like I didn't have that kind of experience that other players did. But now going back and reading it and knowing what the Lich King is, who he was before he was the Lich King, and then how Arthas kind of plays into it, and how Arthas and the Lich King were not the same being at first. Like it just there's a lot of really cool kind of twists and turns in how they play that. I just started the chapter in the book about the Wrath of the Lich King. It's like I just went into like that
Nice.
respooling of Arthas, kind of like putting everything back together. And so you're reminded of like the excitement because I think I remember seeing the trailer or at the very least hearing some fan reactions to the release of the Wrath of the Lich King trailer when it first came out, and people were just losing their minds of how cool it was, and because it's a great trailer too for the game.
Yeah.
But it really kind of pulls at some heartstrings, and with the voiceover of I can't remember his dad's name, but it's essentially Arthur's father talking about ruling as a king, but it's what you're seeing is the Lich King walking around and
Yeah.
doing stuff. It's really, really, really cool stuff. But yeah, so highly recommended. We'll check them out in the show notes. For the Internet Minute this week, I have another kind of I guess, promotional thing. If you're not aware, the Internet Minute is, it's brought to you by you. Normally, I have links to something cool to share on the internet, but the Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. If you're getting value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will get you an invite to the member-only Discord server. There are multiple levels with different rewards like Discord roles and bonus episodes. There's a special note as of late because everybody's spending so much time at home. All of the levels have access to the Barista Cut bonus episodes, not just tier 2, but tier 1, which is only $1 a show, $4 a month, less than a fancy latte. So if you're interested in supporting the show, you can do that at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. We are currently at 20 patrons. We need to have one more to be 21 for June. I'd like to try to have one more patron every month as we roll forward. So if you want to be that one person, or if you have any questions, then feel free to reach out. I'm going to point you towards Twitch. I've been trying to do some extra streaming this month now that my computer is back and running, and we're having a ball. And I've been trying to do more frequent, shorter streams. So like 3 hours tops, but like Saturday, Sunday, I did one Friday night, I did one Tuesday morning. So some odd times. So if you're looking to pop into a really chill Twitch stream, have a good time chatting with some very, very friendly people while I plan around some stuff in Minecraft, then please feel free to check out twitch.tv/Joel Duggan. I'm having a lot of fun over there. The community is growing. People that either use their Twitch Prime sub or join on Patreon, it all comes into the same Discord. So if you know, are listening to this and you've got friends that are on Twitch and they don't really listen to this podcast, but they could all be in the same chat room because it all leads to my Joel Duggan Discord server. So check it out. It's twitch.tv/Joel Duggan. That wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can get more information about the show and some of the links we talked about, including those Amazon affiliate links at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod, and you can, of course, email us at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com. Find us by name on Twitter and Facebook. Subscribe on iTunes, Android, Stitcher, Spotify, and now YouTube. And, of course, word of mouth is the easiest way to support the show. Just share it with a friend. Tell someone, hey, this is a cool podcast. You should listen to it. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I'm doing online at joelduggan.com, including my illustration and design portfolio. Pretty full up on commissions right now, but look for me to be open again probably in the mid-June for more stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, drop me a line through the website. My other podcast is all about Minecraft. It's at thespawnchunks.com, and you can follow me at Joel Duggan on social media everywhere. I'm pretty easy to find. And of course, twitch.tv/Joel Duggan is where I'm hanging my hat mostly these days. Brockett, where can people find you online?
You can just look for the Cat Volver on various social medias, musings and pictures throughout the interverse, the subverse, the internet, whatever.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.